Thanks for joining us. Republican political consultant Jamie Rowe is in the loop with his take on the presidential race in our state. Our lead story, Ms. Harris, Mr. Trump, and Mr. Vance all visit Michigan. What did they say when they were here? To answer that, around the OTR table, Kyle Malin, Jordan Hermody, and Bill Ballinger. Sit in with us as we get the inside out, off the record.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. And now, this edition of Off the Record with Tim Skubic.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Studio C as we continue on our road toward this election. Are we ready for this to be over? Yes? Oh,
yeah, we got a long way to go.
All right, let's first of all, before we get to the visit by all the candidates into Michigan, Jordan, we had the labor unions checking in on a very serious debate going on with the tip workers who want to hang on to their tips, and the union said thanks, but no thanks. How come?
Right. So we have about 6 of the state's largest unions that came out. They wrote a letter to the House Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader. The House and Senate are obviously both controlled by Democrats, basically saying, hey, do not touch what the Supreme Court came down with earlier in the summer, which would phase out a tipped wage for workers. It's just under $4 right now in Michigan, and it would bump Michigan's $10.33 an hour minimum wage. Under the ruling, the minimum wage would increase to nearly $15 an hour by 2028, and that tipped wage would be gone by 2030, and it would match minimum wage levels. So everyone's quote unquote on the even playing field. Labor union said, hey, don't mess with that. This was a victory for workers' rights, and that doesn't really bode well, as many of us know that unions and Democrats are usually typically in good alignment. It doesn't bode well for people who are looking to get that change.
Well, Con, what's interesting is when we had Mr. Ellis, who's from the Bar Owners Association, in this seat, he was talking very optimistically about finding a compromise with the D's, and he said, I have a commitment, or they want to talk to me, the legislative leaders. Game over right now.
Yeah, it would certainly seem like it. I mean, I would say it's game over because this whole scheme was put together by ROC, the Restaurant Opportunities Center, and which is pretty aligned with the labor unions, and they created this formula to make it clear that these servers are at least supposed to be guaranteed now the same minimum wage as everybody else. But we saw also earlier this week that some servers, hundreds of servers, came to the Capitol and said, but we're not making out on this. I mean, we're actually going to lose money because people are going to stop tipping 20% on their bill. And instead of coming home with $100, $150 in tips, I'm just making the minimum wage. Might as well work at Burger King.
Tip workers are screwed. That's what the bottom line is. I mean, look, it was pretty much preordained as far as I'm concerned. The Democrats in the legislature weren't going to do anything on this to begin with. And now any prospect that they would do anything has been dashed by the union statement. So game over. Only thing they got, tip workers, out of this was this modified Supreme Court twitch to postpone the phasing out of the tip wage until 2030, 1 year. That's it. That's all they got, and they're getting screwed.
All right, so the people who are watching this now at home are wondering, so how does this impact me? In fact, there could be. If you believe what the bar owners and restaurant folks are saying, is a couple of things will happen. Some businesses will simply close. All right, we don't know what that number is, but the number is up there. Some workers will leave. Okay, so basically, the hospitality industry will be, you go in and order your food, go up to the bar and pick it up and bring it back to your table.
After this decision came out, the union said right away, this is just business as usual, business crying wolf, and it's all BS, and they're just trying to get this thing scaled back by the legislature, and we're not liking it at that point, and that was like 2-3 weeks ago. Now, yesterday, that's the end of it.
Yeah. All right. So everybody and his uncle was in the state this week. What was the lead out of all of these visits, Kyle? The auto industry is going to die, Donald Trump basically predicted. It's on its last legs.
Kamala Harris with Oprah Winfrey. You know, Michigan just continues to stay relevant. And so these folks are going to continue to get earned media, and they're going to keep bringing up different issues in small crowds to get the TV cameras there. West Michigan is seen as a very critical part of the state, a critical part of the country. So you continue to see J.D. Vance go there. He's been in the state 5 times. 4 times he's been to West Michigan. That's got to tell you something. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is going to Flint, of all things. I mean, that just kind of seems counterintuitive, except when you take a look at the media markets and you realize that if you're able to go to Flint, you're going to guarantee yourself all of those news stations in that Tri-City area in Flint are going to show up. So you get free earned media there. So it just, for both campaigns, they still see this as relevant, as Michigan as being relevant. And as long as we are still relevant, they're going to keep coming here.
I mean, I looked back at the headlines the other day. I think we're going on something like 2 straight months where a presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate has visited the state of Michigan at least once a week. And that really just goes to underscore, A, again, I feel like a broken record saying this, how much of a swing state we are, but B, how tight this race is in Michigan. I mean, we go back to 2020, Joe Biden won by, 154,000 votes. I honestly will be surprised if we do hit such a large threshold and think we may be more looking at something like a 2016 turnout.
William?
Well, this is ground zero on the Electoral College. Michigan, along with Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and a few other states. So the candidates are going to keep coming, and you've got actually dueling vice presidential nominees, Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, both picked to a certain extent because each of the presidential nominees thought they might really be able to help in some other Midwestern states, simply because they've got that Midwestern vibe that is missing from the top of the ticket otherwise. And right now, I'd say J.D. Vance is losing that fight, and I'm wondering whether he's setting himself up for real trouble getting reelected in Ohio if he's not elected this November
it's tough
to be
too
vice
when you pick a guy
president.
from Ohio to try and engender goodwill in Michigan to start.
Already backfired.
Send him to Ann Arbor.
It's already
Let's see how well he
backfired
does
with
there.
that blimp that they flew over the University of Michigan Stadium.
Yeah, the sign.
Yeah.
What about Mr. Trump continues to beat on this auto industry thing? He basically said that the industry's got 2 or 3 years to go, which nobody in this state has said that at all.
No, but I mean, he has become the master of hyperbole and stretching things out and really kind of taking it another step to try and get people excited. Whether it's that or I'm going to cut your energy rates 50%. You know, it's
If I can.
Yeah, if I
If I
can. Right?
can.
Yeah, sure.
If I can.
You know, so it is hyperbole. It's trying to get at our heartstrings and pulling on our insecurities about whether we're going to have a job, whether we're going to have an auto industry, and that's so important to this state.
His argument is that EVs are taking over the industry, and Michigan's going to lose that battle to China, and so the traditional model of the fossil fuel automotive car that was developed in this state over a century ago is going to be kaput, and EVs are taking over, and Michigan is not where the action is.
You know, Debbie Stabenow, we talked to her a couple of weeks ago. She said what is driving this debate on the Republican side is the oil industry. They are the ones that are pulling the strings here to make sure that they have some part of the market left over after the EV revolution, quote, end quote, is over.
Well, if you take a look at Donald Trump's contributions, he does get a significant amount from the petroleum industry, and he has talked on the campaign trail, day one, drill, baby, drill. So that does line up. I think what you guys are talking about does line up about the insecurities. And then talking again, though, about West Michigan and the Goshen plant up north and how J.D. Vance has used that, just recently used it again in Sparta to try and get people excited about the idea of, oh my gosh, what happens if we get all these battery cars, all made in China? What does it look like for our industry, and do we not have jobs anymore? It's a good line that they're playing with, especially when a Democratic administration is giving money to help make this transition happen.
Well, the polling data, we have 2 polls out. The Emerson Hill poll says it is tied here in Michigan, but the university from Connecticut, what's the name of the university?
Quinnipiac.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Notice how I didn't want to pronounce it, and I never will.
They got a good hockey team.
They are.
Yeah.
They're great.
They have a 5-point lead. They gave her a 5-point bounce out of the debate in Michigan, so go figure which one is right.
Well, I think if you take a look at all the polls since Harris became a nominee in Michigan, I counted 18. And Trump is only up in 4 of them, and there's like 3 ties. But the one thing that I have noticed that is similar in all of them is that there's a small, narrow band that each of the candidates are operating within. With Harris, it's somewhere between 51 and 47%. Every single poll has her within that band. And with Trump, he hasn't been able to crest 50% since Harris has been a candidate.
That's the magic number.
In Michigan, not one poll has had him at 50%. He's been at 49, but not 50. So he's in this 49, 46 band. So what I see is, I see that, I'm noting that there's a 5-point margin in one poll, and then another poll has it tied, but they're both within those bands. So if you look at it that way, these polls are still within the margin of error of each other, and that the upshot is that Harris is still marginally up, but again, still within the margin of error.
I mean, it's like the weather in Michigan. If you don't like whatever the poll says about your candidate, just wait 5 minutes and there will be a new one. I mean, we've consistently seen, like Kyle just said, the same thing sort of over and over, and they're operating within, floating between these two metrics that, it hasn't changed it's changed slightly, but it just goes to show how much people are kind of done with this year already.
All right, let's shift gears. Banning not banning, restricting the use of cell phones in schools. This has now become a cause celeb, yes?
Well, it could, at the state level, become a cause célèbre also, although I don't see any evidence of real energy in the legislature
They
to
are
do anything
falling
about
all
it.
over themselves to do this. They had a shot at this a
Exactly
couple
right.
of years
Well,
ago.
Look, local school districts can already do this, and some are,
The
and
governor
some
could
have.
also sign an EO, an executive order, and do it.
She could try that. I mean, the point is, it's all about getting cell phone use out of the classroom, particularly during instructional hours. I mean, maybe there's some rationale to students basically having cell phones when they're not actually in the classroom. But if the best excuse for keeping cell phones with children in class is we got to make sure that they can call their parents and law enforcement if the
Or
school
vice
is being
versa.
terrorized.
The parents, in many respects, locally are driving this debate.
sometimes.
I mean, I can just think back to when I was in high school. I know, just to somewhat defend the usage of cell phones in school, they were brought into instructional time. I mean, there would be times when you would be able to, answer trivia questions that were going on for homework on the board or something like that. I mean, I understand the argument definitely for banning them. Both my parents are teachers. I have heard many stories about how frustrating it can be. I also understand the need for not banning them. I get that it can be very concerning to not have the ability to talk to a child. I'm not a parent myself. Granted, I can't fully comprehend that. But in all fairness, we survived so many years prior to cell phones where you couldn't get a hold of your child. I can't imagine that this one generation of students is that drastically different. I think that, banning, but to that point, banning should probably be left up to the schools. I do find it a little funny that Republicans are kind of leading the charge on this when traditionally
Representative Mark Tisdale has worked on this for over a year, this legislation. He's really done a deep dive. We got into this thing pretty good the other day, and it was really on top of this. He basically says, look, the last thing you want in the midst of an active shooter prowling around at a school is your kid on the phone with their parent when they aren't listening to the person at the head of the room. Okay, you don't want all of the parents jumping in their cars and running to the school while the first responders are trying to get there. And he said, I'm very clear that I understand the angst of the parents in this situation. But his argument was, Kyle, that kids are actually safer if the parents stay out of the loop. That's a dangerous thing to say.
Yeah, it's an interesting argument to make. What I find interesting in this is that Mark Tisdale, a state representative out of Rochester, which is in a politically competitive district, has picked up this issue and is now working it 2 months before an election. So maybe, from my standpoint, it sounds like there's some connection he's trying to make with parents, with schools, trying to make the statement that having cell phones is a distraction in the classroom, and that's something that may be better taken care of as an issue statewide. It's certainly a different debate and something worth having, but I have a feeling that he has people in his district tapping him on the shoulder saying this is a good idea, and that is in response to that.
He confirmed that. He said,
Yeah.
we meet once a month with all the administrators, the principals, and they are all over us. Okay, do something. It helps the mental health situation, the bullying online and stuff like that. Did you ever run into that in school?
Me being bullied?
No.
That feels like a very pointed question.
Well, most of mine are, but I digress.
No, Social media, though, yeah, in school, I mean, I saw it more so moving into college that, I mean, I can think of, for instance, the Campus Yik Yak, and that's going to date me horrifically. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why social media has been used both positively and negatively. To me, it just seems like a really strange fight to pick right now of all times.
Tisdale's got a winning issue, and I think it's a winning issue for Republicans. And guess what? I think it's one of the few times I can think of that Republicans might be in sync with the MEA or teachers in general. I'll tell you,
it's a winning argument if you can
like cell phones disrupting their classroom.
Right, but parents vote too, is all my point is. And that, you know, it seems like a strange issue to pick right now, to Kyle's point, fewer than 60 days ahead of an election. It's not really going to go anywhere, so maybe it's fine in that regard because it doesn't look like the legislature's coming back to vote on much soon.
It's not going to go anywhere right now, but look, this may be a lagging indicator. You could see it on top of everybody's list next
Bill,
year.
Back in the day before were there cell phones, if your parents wanted to get in touch with you in school, what would they do?
Call the principal's office.
Exactly. And would you get the message and then you could ignore it?
I don't think you had any choice but to obey it.
But they have actually said they have put more people on duty to answer the phone in the principal's office if parents want to call in. It's an interesting. I think they will pick it up in the new year. I do, but I've been wrong before. All right, let's call in our guest, talk about politics with Jamie Rowe down in our favorite county, Macomb County. Mr. Rowe, how you doing? Good to see you.
Doing wonderful. Greetings from the center of the universe. The Michigan political universe here in Macomb County.
No, actually, Fraser is the center of the universe, okay? Did you know that?
Which is in Macomb County.
I'm aware of that. Okay. All right. So will you concede that your candidate for the U.S. Senate by the name of Rogers is losing this race today as we sit here? Will you concede that point?
I will not concede that point. I think momentum's with Mike Rogers.
I'm not talking about momentum. I'm talking about who's ahead. We're not doing big Mo. We're doing big lead.
Well, you know, quite honestly, the election isn't held today. But the fact of the matter is, Alyssa Slotkin has already spent $25 million lying about Mike Rogers' record, and her numbers don't move. Rogers is coming up. People are getting reacquainted with him, and we're very confident that come November 5th, Mike Rogers is going to be the next senator from Michigan.
So all the polling data that has her with a firm lead beyond the margin of error, that's simply dead wrong.
I don't know that there is any polling that shows her with a firm lead beyond the margin of error.
Well, there's one that just came out that gave her a 5-point lead.
Plus or minus what? Let me just say this. I'm not going to debate polls, particularly media polls that are often
Of course you're not,
done.
because you're losing them, right?
No, because media polls are often done not to reflect public opinion, but to try and shape it. And we are paying attention to what we have internally, and what we have internally shows that we are on the path to victory in November.
What does your polling data show about John James? Have you been following that race? And now that the Democrats are starting to actually spend some real money on their candidate, Carl Marlinga, is there concern that he's in trouble?
I think John James is doing great. He won last year. In 2022, in a year when we're getting beat by 10 points at the top of the ticket and held on to win in what is sort of a tough district at that time. I think he's got 2 years of experience now where he's really delivered, particularly here for Macomb County. And I'm pretty confident John James is going to be strong on Election Day. He's done an absolutely great job in Congress. He's worked with all of our local leaders down here. I was speaking to one local Democrat leader at an event the other day who was praising the job that John James has done for Macomb County. So I'm pretty confident. I actually live about 500 feet outside of John James' district right now, and he has got a ton of support down here in Macomb County. You know, the other thing that they did, the 1.7 million, I guess, from some outside group that's going to come in and support Marlinga, bought late in the game at extortion rates on Detroit TV. So it's not going to go as far as what John James already has. Confident that he's going to have the ability to get his message out. And quite honestly, Macomb County's voting Republican.
That's what I'm saying. From the top of the ticket back down, Trump, you think is going to carry Macomb County pretty easily?
I think Trump is going to carry Macomb County better than he carried it in 2016 or 2020, and he carried it in both. And I think we're going to see a big margin here out of the county. And I'll just tell you this, his coattails in Macomb County are long. When we were running in 2016, Trump carried Macomb County solidly and helped us to elect our county treasurer. My former boss, Candace Miller, got elected Public Works Commissioner, and we elected a woman that probably had no business winning as our county clerk. So the coattails for Trump in this area are long, and I think it helps not only John James, but it also helps us to take back the majority in the state house, where we have several very competitive races for the state house here in Macomb County. Feeling very confident about those as well.
To that point, you mentioned that John James won in 2022. He only won by half a percentage point, though. And, with Trump on the ballot this year, it's no secret that suburban women helped deliver Joe Biden a victory in 2020. All that being said, with the current rhetoric that we're kind of hearing out of the Vance-Trump ticket, are we at all concerned that 0.5 victory that you guys had in 2022, that's going to be, drawn down? Like, what are you guys, I guess, doing moving into this election year differently that you didn't do in 22?
Well, one thing we have is a strong top of the ticket. I mean, that is the very different situation than it was in 2022. Also, Prop 3 is not on the ballot in 2024. Those were things that really hurt us at the ballot box in areas across the state. I can't tell you how much more helpful it is for someone like John James or these state house races to have Donald Trump leading the ticket and Mike Rogers. I mean, our two top of the ticket races are going to be very strong in this area, and that's going to help across the board. And as far as communicating with suburban women, yes, and we're going to talk about issues that they care about, like the economy, starting with the economy and the border. To think that suburban women are only interested in abortion like some on the other side do, I think it is a slap at suburban women.
Jamie, you had mentioned a little earlier about the state house races, and you feel like Republicans are going to be successful there. How many seats do you believe, just in Macomb County, the Republicans will be able to flip in Macomb County, and be specific on which ones?
Well, I think that obviously, I think the ones that are up for grabs are pretty self-explanatory based on where the Democrats are plowing cash into right now. I think Nate Shannon is in very big trouble in Sterling Heights and Warren. Denise Menser, I think, is in very big trouble in Clinton Township and Sterling Heights in Mount Clemens. And My Song, I think, has some issues, and that seat is one that Trump carried twice previously. So I think we're going to be in the battle in all three of those, and I think all of our incumbents are safe.
Mr. Trump's rhetoric about the auto industry has not exactly sounded complimentary. Is there a potential backlash from him coming in this state and saying we're going to be toast in 2 years?
Donald Trump is telling the truth about the auto industry. The fact of the matter is that the Biden-Harris-Slotkin EV mandate is a problem for the auto industry. I'm here in Macomb County right now, and you know what we do? We manufacture things in Macomb County, particularly for the auto industry. And one thing that electric vehicles don't need are engines and parts. And certainly a lot less parts than you have in an electric vehicle. And you don't need engine plants. You don't need transmission plants. You don't need all the things that you need to put together an electric vehicle. And it is 40% less labor, and the UAW themselves knows this. 40% less labor to build an EV than to build a gas-powered car.
Yes, but they also counter that new jobs will be created in the EV industry, and those people will just simply segue from one to the other.
40% less labor, Tim, to build an EV, and that includes whatever those new jobs are that will allegedly be created. And quite honestly, another thing I think that most people around here involved in the auto industry have problems with is they do not want to have to import technology from China and import Chinese Communist Party connected companies to build the automobiles of the future. And quite honestly, right now, you cannot build an EV without importing minerals and materials from China, who controls 80% of the world market for the chemicals that are needed to build electric vehicle batteries. So EVs empower China, and internal combustion engines power America. So I'm for powering the American auto industry, not the Chinese auto industry.
Jamie, the Teamsters have refused to endorse in the presidential race this year. Quite unusual. First time they haven't endorsed the Democratic nominee since before Bill Clinton. So what do you make of that?
I think that it was interesting when their announcement came out yesterday, because the president of the Teamsters Union said that Kamala Harris did not achieve a majority of the poll of their members, and Donald Trump didn't claim a consensus. So it makes you think if Kamala Harris had gotten a majority of their members, they likely would have endorsed her. But I don't know, Trump needed 100% or something like that to get the union to have the courage to actually reflect the will of their members. We're seeing this with blue-collar workers across the country, and certainly across this state, that they know that their lives were better under Donald Trump, and that he is about building American industry, not foreign industry, and it's showing up in the polls. I thought it was very interesting that in the Teamsters' own poll of their members, 59% wanted Donald Trump, but the union leadership didn't have the courage to endorse him. And I think that was a mistake on their part, but I think it shows that we're winning blue-collar votes. We are the party of the working class. Now, the Republican Party is the party of the working class, and
Mr.
we're
Rowe?
feeling very strong about where we're at with those voters.
Mr. Rowe, thank you for being on the program. It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you, too.
Okay, so in other words,
Thanks for having me.
you think Harris is going to win, right?
I do not.
Just checking. Also, our thanks to our panel. Next week, more Off the Record right here. Please join us.
Production of Off the Record is made possible in part by Martin Waymeyer, a full-service strategic communications agency, partnering with clients through public relations, digital marketing, and public policy engagement. Learn more at martinwaymeyer.com. For more Off the Record, visit WKAR.org. Michigan Public Television stations have contributed to the production costs of Off the Record.